This thrillingly varied program is curated to celebrate the 100th birthday of George Gershwin's revolutionary Rhapsody in Blue, featuring one of our favorite soloists, Conrad Tao, in a double bill. We begin with Sergei Rachmaninoff's Fourth Concerto, and what a concerto it is. The Fourth Concerto belongs to a very special, fascinatingly small group of pieces that Rachmaninoff wrote after he left Russia in 1917. As a wealthy landowner, he was fleeing the Bolshevik regime that had done away with private property. When he left his beloved country estate at Ivanovka, he would never see it again. Rachmaninoff was penniless and was forced to undertake a new career as a concert pianist, not a composer. Although he'd always played concerts, he'd always balanced his two careers, but now performing would save his family and help build a new fortune in the new world. But composition suffered. When Rachmaninoff set pen to paper on his Fourth Concerto, he was already 54 years old. The world had changed enormously since his famous Third Concerto, and so had music, with another very different Russian composer, Igor Stravinsky, dominating modernism. Rachmaninoff's late period would eventually spawn the masterpieces of the Rhapsody on a Theme of Paganini, the Third Symphony, and perhaps Rachmaninoff's greatest achievement, the Symphonic Dances. All these works are absolutely Rachmaninoff: the lyricism, the swooning chromaticism, the sheer melodic beauty of the material. But there's a new element, a modicum of emotional distance that provides a new clarity in orchestration and harmony, a new brevity, even a hint of Stravinsky's sharp-edged, fashionable neoclassical style. The Fourth Concerto is the first of this group of pieces. But this new style was not immediately appreciated. First performed in 1927 with Leopold Stokowski conducting the Philadelphia Orchestra, with Rachmaninoff himself as the soloist, the concerto was a flop. Critics heard mere echoes of former greatness and complained about the concerto's inordinate length. The failure devastated Rachmaninoff, and he wrote nothing for a number of years afterwards. Perhaps because of these criticisms, when he returned to composition, Rachmaninoff became increasingly obsessed with musical economy, revising a number of his works, including the Third Concerto, cutting unnecessary bars. Toward the end of his life in 1941, living in Long Island, New York, he reimagined the Fourth Concerto into the version we know today. The first movement begins with tremendous energy, as if we're opening the door on a party that's already in full swing. The piano begins with a characteristically Rachmaninoff soaring melody, but it's cut off rather sooner than we might expect. Throughout the movement, nothing is as you expect, which is exactly what I love. The harmony is fresh and surprising, and each time you think you've got a sense of what's happening, Rachmaninoff pulls the carpet from under you. The second movement bears testament to Rachmaninoff's time in New York, where he loved to visit jazz clubs. Its piano solo opening sounds like the beginning of an improvisation in a smoky bar. A measured, reassuring orchestral melody on strings converses with the piano. The finale is a high-octane affair, beginning without a break. Towards its end, the party music from the opening movement returns, bringing the concerto to a climax with the same melody as the first. From then on, the music seems to disappear like sand through our fingers as the pianist races to the finish. But there is no romantic apotheosis here, as we might expect from the second and third concertos, and the work ends emphatically, but ambiguously. Nothing is as it seems in these later works. After the Rachmaninoff, Conrad will mop his brow while we perform Jessie Montgomery's Strum. Montgomery's music has swept America by storm over the past few years, with nearly every American symphony orchestra performing some of her many and varied works. Montgomery and 6 other composers have been nicknamed the Blacknificent Seven, and I'm delighted that another of the group, Carlos Simon, will be writing a piece especially for the Jacksonville Symphony next season. Strum is for string orchestra, beginning with a plucked pizzicato ostinato, that's a repeating figure in the accompaniment, over which we hear a brooding, folksy theme on bowed cellos. These two ideas are developed, growing into a beautifully moving music rooted in American musical tradition. Jessie comments, Drawing on American folk idioms and the spirit of dance movement, the piece has a kind of narrative that begins with fleeting nostalgia and transforms into an ecstatic celebration. After his break, Conrad Tao returns for another celebration, George Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue. This extraordinary piece, part symphony, part concerto, part big band swing session, has an amusing genesis. In January 1924, Gershwin had the unsettling experience of reading in the New York Tribune that he was already at work on a jazz concerto for a concert by the band leader Paul Whiteman that promised to broaden concertgoers' conception of what serious American music can be. But Gershwin was not aware that he was at work on any such piece, and a phone call to Whiteman revealed that he'd been thinking of asking Gershwin for some time, but the date of the concert had been moved up to avoid a conflict with a rival conductor. Amused, Gershwin agreed to write the piece at lightning speed, but asked that it be more of a free-form piece, slightly shorter than a concerto, and for a small complement of instruments. Originally written for a jazz band, the piece was orchestrated by Gershwin's in-house arranger, Ferdy Grofé, famous for his Grand Canyon Suite. Grofé remembers the compositional process. I practically lived too in the Gershwins' uptown Amsterdam and 100th Street apartment, for I called there daily for more pages. He and his brother Ira had a back room where there was an upright piano, and that is where Rhapsody in Blue grew into being. It was on a train that I suddenly heard and even saw on paper the complete construction of the Rhapsody in Blue from beginning to end. I heard it as a sort of musical kaleidoscope of America, of our vast melting pot, of our unduplicated national pep, of our metropolitan madness. By the time I reached Boston, I had a definite plot of the piece, as distinguished from its actual substance. The piece was introduced barely a month after Gershwin began it in an arrangement for big band. Grofé would later orchestrate the work for full orchestra. At the first rehearsal, the clarinetist elided the opening scale into a single rising glissando, and an iconic American sound was born. After a swooning laconic opening, Gershwin presents us with clear melodic material in the form of a bluesy tune, a march, and finally an indulgently romantic theme in the strings. As the music critic Tom Service brilliantly notes, the Danish composer Carl Nielsen wanted his Fourth Symphony, the Inextinguishable, to be a manifesto for what he thought of as the fundamental life force of music. The piece erupts like a volcano with two sets of timpani, one on either side of the stage, throwing strokes at each other. This is accompanied by a kind of irrepressible, surging energy that characterizes the whole symphony. It was composed between 1914 and 1917, when the world was still in the darkest hours of World War I. Tom Service again. It's a piece that's simultaneously a war symphony, a document of the violence and intensity and emotion of the times in which it was written, and one of the most bracing revelations of what its composer thought as the self-sustaining, organically generating powers of symphonic discourse. Nielsen marks a section towards the middle of the first movement, glorioso, and the music is indeed glorious. Pealing trombones and trumpets present music of remarkable grandeur and power that acts as a kind of memory throughout the work. Rather than describing the rest of the piece, I'm going to give the final words to the composer himself, who wrote brilliantly about what drove him to compose the Inextinguishable. Music is life. As soon as even a single note sounds in the air or through space, it is the result of life and movement. That is why music and the dance are the more immediate expressions of the will to life. The symphony evokes the most primal sources of life and the wellspring of the life feeling, that is, what lies behind all human, animal, and plant life as we perceive or live it. It is not a musical, program-like account of the development of a life within a limited stretch of time and space, but an unprogram-like dip right down to the layers of the emotional life that are still half chaotic and wholly elementary. In other words, the opposite of all program music, despite the fact that it sounds like a program. It is in a way a completely thoughtless expression of what makes the birds cry, the animals roar, bleat, run and fight, and humans moan, groan, exult and shout without any explanation. The symphony does not describe all this, but the basic emotion that lies beneath all this. Music can do just this. It is its most profound quality, its true domain, because by simply being itself, it has performed its task. For it is life, whereas the other arts only represent and paraphrase life. Life is indomitable and inextinguishable. The struggle, the wrestling, the generation and the wasting away go on today as yesterday, tomorrow as today, and everything returns. Once more, music is life, and like it, inextinguishable. As we welcome you back from the holidays, we can't wait to share this program of irrepressible, uplifting, life-giving energy with you.